Y'all thought I was finished?
Hi, and welcome back to Football Barbie, where we talk about anything and everything football here. So today we are going to talk about the top 2022 tight ends. Now, I feel like if anybody truly pays attention to football, you probably already know who the number one tight end is going to be. I mean, at the end of the day, this man is an absolute animal, and he's definitely probably going to be one of the number one tight ends for quite some time. So let's furthermore get it started and talk about number one on the list at Travis Kielce from the Chiefs. Now, all of these were based upon ratings, so it's really hard to try to choose like who's best, who's not, who's good, who's this. You know, it is based upon ratings. So Mr. Travis Kielce from the Kansas City Chiefs, honestly, no surprise here. I don't know if anybody is going to be able to kind of surpass him for a while. You know, maybe eventually one of the rookie quarterbacks or anybody else will be able to take his place. But for now, Travis Kielce holds the title at number one for tight ends. And tight ends are definitely a crucial part to any offensive line. So he was the only tight end to cross the 90 mark threshold and one of three to hit the 80 threshold. He had 92 catches that resulted in either a first down or a touchdown last season. Out of 6 tight ends who recorded 800 receiving yards, he had 802 yards after the catch. Okay. 29 tight ends were targeted at least 50 times, and he led the group with an average of 2.24 yards per route run, and he was the only tight end to surpass the 2.0 yards per route run. He's basically up there with like wide receivers. So Kielce was one of the 7 tight ends to be targeted on at least 20% of their receiving snaps, and he did finish the year ranked 15 at the position with a 61.2 run blocking grade. So as in former tight ends, he was just very dominant of everything. He did end up having 110 receptions for the 2022 season with 1,338 receiving yards, 12 touchdowns, and he was targeted 152 times. So next on the list, probably no surprise to anybody else as well, Mr. George Kittle from the 49ers. Now, obviously, everybody knows that George Kittle is a phenomenal player as well, but still not close to catching Kielce right now. He did earn a third-ranked 69.5 run blocking grade position as a tight end with 28 explosive catches that resulted in a 15-yard plus gain. That's definitely when it really matters. You know, when you can get that 15-yard gain, that's huge. He did finish the year tied for third among tight ends with a 10.9 positive run block rate. He did have 60 receptions last year for 765 total receiving yards with 11 touchdowns, and he was targeted 86 times. Next on our list, we have Mr. Mark Andrews with the Ravens. Now, he was definitely obviously one of those. These are like the top 3 by far tight ends that you would ever want to have. Or, you know, if you're on his team, then I'm sure this is definitely probably a jersey that you might possess. So Mark Andrews with the Ravens, he had a 79.4 receiving grade to go with a 70.1 run blocking grade. He was the only tight end last season to eclipse the 70 threshold, though, in both. So congrats for him for that. He did rank second in the position with 1.92 yards per route run, right under Kielce. His 28 explosive plays with Kittle was tied for the second most. Out of 39 tight ends with a 250-plus run blocking snaps, he ranked first with a 6.3% negative play rate. So for last season, he had 73 receptions, 113 targets, 847 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Next on our list, the Eagles, Mr. Dallas Goedert with the Eagles. He is one of 5 tight ends who have at least 1,000 receiving snaps to go with a 90-plus receiving grade over the past 5 seasons. 5. He ranked 4th with 1.76 yards per route run, and he was one of 4 tight ends who caught, which is great, at least 60% of their contested targets, minimum 10 such targets. 55 receptions he had last year. He was targeted 69 times. He had a total of 702 receiving yards, and he did manage to get 3 touchdowns. Next on our list, I'm not honestly 100% sure how to say his name, but if you are a Steelers fan, you would know Mr. Pat FREIERMUTH. FREIERMUTH. I'm not really sure. I'm sorry. He has posted receiving grades north of 70 in each of his first 2 professional seasons. His average of 1.62 yards per route run and ranked him 7th for the position. 37 catches of his was either going for a first down or a touchdown, which ranked him 7th as well. His 11 forced missed tackles ranked him in the 5th position out of all the tight ends. He did manage to get 63 receptions. He was targeted 98 times out of that for 732 yards receiving, and he did score 2 touchdowns. Next on our list with a great team, you have TJ HOCKENSON. He had 1.66 yards per route run and 20 explosive plays, both of which placed him 5th. His 141 targets for the season only trailed behind KELCE, and he did join KELCE as the only tight end to hit the 100 catch mark, along with the 100 receiving yard mark. So good for them. The Lions-Viking caught 57.1% of his contested targets and the 7th best rate in the position. His 20 contested catches were 8 more than any other tight end. He had 86 receptions, 129 times he was targeted for 914 receiving yards and managed to score 6 touchdowns. Next on our list, we have David NJOKU with the Cleveland Browns. So he set new highs this season, seeing the 2nd highest snap total in his career. And he does continue to be a solid blocker and occasionally pass protect. He ranked 9th among tight ends with an average of 1.53 yards per route run. His 14 explosive pass plays tied for 9th most, and his 36 catches resulting in either a first down or a touchdown was the 8th most among tight ends. He finished the season with a 76.3 pass blocking grade, his 3rd consecutive year of surpassing 70 after earning sub-60 marks in each of his first 3 seasons. 36 tight ends had tailed at least 100 pass blocking snaps over the past 3 seasons, and he ranks 1st among them with a 77.9 pass blocking grade. He has pass blocked 136 times and has allowed a sack on a quarterback knockdown just once. So last year he had 58 receptions. He was targeted 80 times for 628 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now we all do know that the Vikings have, I'm always talking about the Vikings, the Browns. My bad. Sorry. So next on the list, we have Josh Oliver. He was with the Ravens. So he's currently moving, though, to the Vikings. So he did really well last year, and now he's going to the Vikings. So let's see what happens on the Vikings. Of everyone on the list, he ran the fewest routes, though, this past season by far. He did finish with just 176 routes, and he was targeted just 25 times, recording only 16 catches for 2 touchdowns. Now, that's definitely not good numbers. And 7 first downs. And he was on the Ravens, but I mean, the Ravens had other people too, but his 74 run blocking mark grade made him one of 2 tight ends, though, to surpass the 70 mark, and just 11 NFL tight ends exceeded a 60 run blocking grade on at least 300 run blocking snaps. He had a positive 15.3% run blocking rate, which paced the rest of the players by a landslide. So that was really good for him, though. He did manage to only have 14 receptions, with 25 being targeted. Like I said, 149 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So curious to see how he's going to do on the Vikings. Next on the list, Mr. GERALD EVERETT from the Chargers. So he showed off on the open field elusiveness, ranking 2nd at the position with 18 forced missed tackles, and his average of 6.3 yards after the catch per reception ranked him 5th out of all the tight ends. He also placed 7th among the tight ends with 17 explosive plays and finished the year tied for 9th with 34 combined first downs and touchdowns. So that was fantastic. He did have 58 receptions for the year with 87 targets, 55 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's no bueno, though. He didn't have a lot of yards. Next on the list, now you have Dalton Schultz, who was on the Cowboys, But now he's moving to the Texans. So he did finish 5th with a 65.9 run blocking grade. He produced as a pass catcher with his 34 combined touchdowns and first downs, ranking him 9th out of all the tight ends. His average of 1.42 yards per route run. He did have a 7.6% drop rate, placed 3rd highest at this position. Of the 23 tight ends to run block at least 300 times, last season he ranked 4th best at an 8.7% positive run block rate and 5th best with a 13.2% negative run block rate. He did have 57 receptions, 89 targets. He had 577 yards and 5 touchdowns. Next on our list, we have Mr. Evan Engram with Jacksonville. So he ranked 4th among tight ends with 123 times being targeted. 123 targets. He was 3rd with 88 catches and 5th with 905 receiving yards for that time frame. He did rank 11th with an average of 1.41 yards per route run. He was 22nd out of 29 qualifying tight ends with a 33.3% contested catch rate. Or 8th worst with a 52.3% of his catches not resulting in a first down or touchdown. So we all know that Jacksonville needs to improve themselves. He had his best season, though, so far as a run blocker. He passed the 60 threshold for just the 2nd time in his career. So he did also score 4 touchdowns last season. Next on our list, we have Mr. Cole Kmet with the Bears. He was targeted in 15.9% of his 452 routes, the 5th lowest rate among 20 tight ends who ran at least 400 routes. Of his 72 targets, only 76.4 were deemed catchable. So we all know that, unfortunately, the Bears suffered issues last year. 7th lowest in the group. He did average 5.9 yards after the catch, ranking him 6th. His 457 run blocking snaps were the most by any tight end, and his 65.1 run blocking grade ranked him 6th. So like I said, he had really receptions. He had 544 receiving yards with 7 touchdowns. Up next, which I'm honestly slightly surprised, you have Dawson Knox from the Buffalo Bills. I'm surprised he's this far down the list. His average of 1.06 yards per route run placed only 25th, and that would be why. 7.6% from the rate was tied for the 3rd highest. He did come in at 14th with a 54.4% of his catches, resulting in either a first down or a touchdown. He also did fare, though, well as a blocker. His 8.4% positive run block rate placed him 5th. Out of 30 tight ends who stayed to pass protect at least 40 times, he earned a 10th place at 65.1% of his catches with a 65.6% pass blocking grade. He had 48 receptions last season for 65 times being targeted with 517 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Then you have Mr. Austin Hooper with the Titans, who is now actually going to the Raiders. So there was quite a few changes for tight ends last season. He, like Kmet from Bears, falls into the group of pass catchers who were limited, though, by their offense. So we all know that the Raiders weren't the best. However, the Raiders do have Devontae Adams. The Titans weren't the best last season. So now that he's going to Raiders, it's going to be really curious to see how he does because the Raiders have Devontae Adams. So he only made 43 catches being with the Titans on a mere 59 targets. So he ranked 3rd by converting 65.1% of his catches to either first downs or a touchdown. So at a limited amount of time, though, he still really tried. And he had a 2.2% drop rate and was the 3rd lowest mark at that position. So he came down with 60% of his targets tied for 3rd best at the tight end position. He had 41 receptions, being targeted 60 times for 444 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm really curious to see how he's going to do in the Raiders. I think that now that with Garoppolo on the Raiders, he has Devontae Adams on the Raiders, I'm really curious how he's going to do. And then we got Mr. Foster Moreau from the Raiders, who was on the Raiders, and now he's going to the Saints. So you have Hooper going to the Raiders, and Moreau, who was on the Raiders, is now going to the Saints. Switching. He endured a miserable season as a run blocker with a 40.8 run blocking grade, placing him last out of 23 tight ends who had at least 300 run blocking snaps. He had a 2.8% positive run block rate, which ranked him last. He was the only tight end to log at least 40 pass blocking snaps, 63, and not surrender a single pressure. There was his positive. He ranked first by converting 70.6% of his catches into either first down or touchdown. So he barely had anything, but with the things that he actually did receive, he was able to do the first down or a touchdown. So that's great because he was first in that, but 35.3% of his catches were explosive plays that went for at least 15 yards, third best rate among tight ends. He did have 33 receptions only, after being targeted only 54 times for 420 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think it's kind of interesting. I'm wondering if the Saints took MOREAU from the Raiders because they took Carr from the Raiders. So, maybe MOREAU and Carr play well together and they wanted both of them together. So I would love to know what you think. How do you think the 2022 tight ends did? How do you think they fared? Who is your favorite tight end? And if your favorite tight end wasn't on this list, tell me down below. I would obviously love if you could like, subscribe, comment, anything. I will get back to you. I absolutely love you all. Ta-ta for now.